Yo, what's up, Hivers? Hope everybody's good on this 90s Friday. Bringing you 5-Tune Friday on 90s Friday. 5 tunes from the 90s plus a bonus jam. This week, it's all songs from 1999. Pretty much all alternative rock. We got a Third Eye Blind song opening it up. You know, some people might consider them a little more on the pop side. But I actually think this song, pretty much like a pop rock song. I think it should have been a single. I think it's really catchy. The song is called Anything from the 1999 second album from Third Eye Blind, the album Blue. You might know some singles that got some radio play and MTV play from this album. Definitely seems like it was just a step below their 97 record in terms of the success. I mean, who doesn't know the song do 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 I want something else? I mean, that song was literally one of the biggest songs of the 90s. But this album did come out in late 99. Never Let You Go was the opening single. The single 10 Days Late was the follow-up. And I remember these being all over MTV, all over radio. Why this opening track on the record, the song Anything, was not a single. It's definitely a shorter song. But I think it's the catchiest tune on the record. And it's definitely more on the pop side compared to the rest of the list. But I just think it's a good song. Just my personal opinion. Next up, second tune is the Foo Fighters, 1999. Definitely a drop-off from the success of their first two albums. Just being honest. This was a big single. It got a lot of play on MTV radio. Looking to the sky to save me. Looking at a burn-out bride. The song is Learn to Fly from the 1999 third Foo Fighter album, There Is Nothing Left to Lose. And to me, I love the opening track, Stacked Actors. Generator was the third single. Whatchamacallit from Me, Myself, and Irene, the Jim Carrey soundtrack. You make me break out. Breakout. That was the second single, and they just kind of bombed in comparison to the success of Learn to Fly. The album overall just feels like a half album to me. And I say that complimenting the first two Foo Fighter records. You have the first one, the 1995 self-titled. Dave Grohl recorded all of it by himself. He played guitar, drums, bass, vocals, and he recorded it as a demo. It was not recorded like in a major studio, and not produced to the level that one of the members of a band as big as Nirvana, you would expect their debut album to have a pretty high budget. Which, their second album definitely did. But again, the label said to Dave, hey, we just want to release it like it is. And there's something about it that just has character. The low production, it's just, it was 1995, so you're coming off of grunge. And just the raw sound being more appreciated than I think it would have been in a lot of other eras. And then you have the follow-up, The Color and the Shape, the 1997 second Foo Fighter record, where Dave again played drums because their touring drummer just apparently wasn't really good enough. The brother of the bass player, the only founding Foo Fighters member, the first group of guys Dave toured with in 95, I always get their names mixed up. I think Chad Goldsmith is the bass player, but that might be the drummer. His brother was the drummer for the first year and a half, 2 years. And Dave just didn't think the drumming on the record was very good. He was willing to let let him stay in the band. But he got insulted and left. And so Dave did play drums on the second album, even though Goldsmith is credited and paid, which I thought was kind of a classy move, to be honest. We're all trashing Dave Grohl for, what's his name, being asked to leave the band. Their latest drummer, his name escapes me at the moment, but he's like the most famous drummer in the world right now. And, kind of a classy move to, let the old drummer, get paid. He could have just said, hey, you're out of the band. You didn't write these songs. You're not getting any credit. And to me, that second Foo Fighters album, I mean, the success, this literally Monkey Wrench opens it up. Then you have Everlong, which is one of the best songs of the 90s. Then you have Hero. I mean, Everlong and Hero are two of the biggest songs of the 90s. They'd probably be in a top 25 list of like the most airplay, most success of any alternative rock songs. I think those two songs would be on it. And Monkey Wrench wouldn't be far behind. It was just such a monster success. And, to be followed up by this album, Nothing Left to Lose, it just seems like, honestly, it's a huge step down. There's some good songs on it. I like the single Learn to Fly. I think it's a cool song. And I like the opening track, Stacked Actors. To me, the third and fourth Foo Fighter album sound like three good songs plus a bunch of filler. And I'm saying that because on the first two albums, you can play them cover to cover, and it's just really good. I'd probably say the fifth and sixth album, same thing. It's just a lot of filler. And then their 2011 seventh album, which there was one notation. Pat Smear had left the band in 1998. So he was not in the studio for any albums except for the second record. Again, remember Dave Grohl recorded the first one by himself. So you had some member changes. You had a new drummer who had been in the band touring, but, Dave Grohl had played on the first two records, so it was just a very different process. But to me, the songs just were not on the same level. And you'd have to literally combine, like, the third, fourth, and fifth album and just take, like, the five best songs on each one and maybe remove, like, one or two more. And you'd have an album that's a lot stronger and comparable to the second record. And then for whatever reason, that seventh album in 2011, to me, cover to cover, every song is really good. If it wasn't for that album, I think the Foo Fighters would literally... And again, they at least had one big single on all these albums. So Learn to Fly was huge. Then the next record, you had One by One. All my life I've been looking for something. Yeah, that was a huge song. And you had Times Like These. With times like these you learn to live again. Almost sounds like a Pearl Jam song. And then their worst album number 5, happens to have their biggest single of all time, which all the follow-up singles bombed. But you had I got another confession to make. Oh, I'm your fool, the best of you. Biggest song ever. I mean, it was literally the biggest song, biggest played song of the year on pop radio, alternative radio. And then the second, third, and fourth single, I can't even tell you what they were because they got no play whatsoever. Same thing with the next album. The song The Pretender was a huge, huge rock and MTV hit, rock radio and MTV hit. And then the second and third single completely bombed. So you got to give them credit. They had at least one big hit on every album. I mean, monster success. And then their seventh album, every song is good. And commercially, it did do pretty well. You had Rope was the lead single. The second single was Learning to Walk Again. So you had two big singles. And then you had like three other singles that didn't do as well, but the album was just great. And then, they do that weird 8-song album where they record a different song in each city, and it was like a documentary. So yeah, it's a drop off. The Foo Fighters definitely end the 90s with a drop off. 2 out of 3 90s releases. Hey, that ain't bad. You know what I mean? What are you gonna do? Next up, Incubus, Pardon Me, from their album 1999's Make Yourself. I think this album really, really blew up in 2000, but I do remember Pardon Me was starting to get a lot of play on MTV and radio in the end of 99, and the album was released in 99, but they definitely continued to blow up, and they put out, their song Drive is from this record, and I mean, that really blew up in 2001. So I might be misremembering. It might have taken into early 2000 before this album really got mainstream success. Because the song Drive really blew up in 2000. It was already a single, spring of 2000, and then when 9/11 happened, it just blew up even more. But this single was released in 99. I would say 2000 really pushed them over the edge commercially. But just a great song released in the 90s. Next up, we're going with the band Chevelle, another band that blew up in the early 2000s. You might know their song Felt the Pain Below or something like that. Much like suffocating. It was like on alternative rock radio all over MTV. So their first album comes out in 99 on an independent label. It does not do anything commercially. This is the one song out of the 5 where the band blew up, on their next album. This album did not blow up. Incubus, it took into the year 2000. This album did nothing commercially. I included it because I think it's kind of a hidden gem, very 90s-esque record, released in early 99. And it was produced by Steve Albini, who obviously is of Nirvana fame. He produced In Utero, the last Nirvana album in 93. He produced Bush, Razorblade Suitcase. That came out in 1996. Just a very distinct kind of sound and kind of vibe. These records produced by Steve Albini. He produced Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. That was actually, I believe, 1989. So that was the 80s, but it definitely, influenced everything that came a couple years later, especially Nirvana. And then pick number 5, I'm going with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Monster album, 1999's Californication. And I'm picking the song Californication, which the music video came out in 2000. When the album came out in summer of 99, you had the single Scar Tissue. The second single was Other Side. Those were rocking the radio waves in 1999. And I think they actually did like 5 or 6 music videos for this album. But the third biggest single was Californication. Again, released in 1999, but as a single, getting radio play in 2000. So just covering some tunes from the tail end of the 90s here. A couple bands, that already had made themselves very well known, like the Chili Peppers in 91. The Foo Fighters with their 95 and 97 record. Third Eye Blind with their 97 album. And then Chevelle, they find themselves, getting mainstream love a couple years later in late 2001, early 2002. And then for a bonus jam, I'm going to bring you another band that put out this song and album in 1999. But they didn't really get a lot of mainstream success on their first 2 albums. Jimmy Eat World. So I picked the song Lucky Denver Mint from the album Clarity. It came out in early to mid 1999. It actually did appear on a movie soundtrack with Drew Barrymore, Never Been Kissed. I'll include the soundtrack version. I believe it is a different mix. So they were big enough to be in a soundtrack. I believe they also were in an episode of Party of Five. So, the song got a little bit of television and movie play But yeah, they just didn't really break. They get dropped from their label, so they put out an album in 97 and 99. They were touring with bands like Blink-182. You know, they were kind of considered emo, you know, in the 90s when it was kind of something different than it became in the mid-2000s. They got dropped by their label and literally recorded a third album and then got dropped, and the label gave them the rights to it. They gave them the masters. They signed another record deal, and the next thing you know, they put out this album called Bleed American. The single is called Bleed American, and then it's getting alternative rock play summer of 2001. And then 9/11 happens, and because of the title, it was removed from radio. It was literally banned by the Bush administration, by the FCC. There were a lot of songs banned. The song F Authority by Pennywise. The song Blowing Up the Neighborhood by Sugar Cult, who was like a pop punk band. Just crazy, crazy stuff. And then they put out a second single, the song The Middle, which just became a giant pop radio crossover hit. It just takes some time, a little girl in the middle of the ride. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be all right. Had some, you know, continued mainstream success with the song Sweetness, and their third single appeared on a bunch of soundtracks. Their follow-up albums, they had a couple minor hits, you know, nothing crazy. But yeah, that's kind of the story of some 1999 picks. We got 6 total, including the bonus jam. 4 that are from bands, you know, pretty clear mainstream success. And then 2 that would later have mainstream success a couple years later on the next album. But they definitely had like a niche, you know, smaller following. In particular, Jimmy Eat World. Like I knew about them before they blew up in 2001, 2002. I remember seeing them open for Blink-182 in 99 or 2000. They were kind of in that, like, I know it sounds weird, but like these emo, slower, melodic bands, like a lot of them toured with these punk bands. And yeah, those are the picks for 90s Friday, June 20th. Can you believe it's June 20th already? Let me know what you think below. Let me know what you think about, you know, what I'm saying about the Foo Fighters kind of dropping off a cliff with their third album. Am I being too harsh? I definitely picked the best song on the record, in my opinion. But let me know what you think, and I love you guys. Later.